Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
You can tell a lot about where a company is going by looking at where it's been. ConocoPhillips, Alaska's oil and gas company.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberly Hepner and today is January 6, 2014. When we're not here on the show, you could always check out our information. You can go to www.arh.noaa.gov, or if you'd like to get your information via the phone line, you can call 1-800-472-0391. And as always, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Now on to your satellites that's out further towards the west across the Aleutian area. You can see one circulation right around the Unalaska or Dutch Harbor area. And then there's a second circulation just south of Shemya, and you'll be able to see that spin in just a moment. So we have two circulations that are moving along the jet stream. So put that into motion one more time, and you can just see mostly cloudy conditions are existing over the Bering Sea as High Ridge is starting to break down just to the north of it. And as we take a closer look at home, low pressure brought a front across the central Gulf Coast areas and pushed inland, bringing snow to much of the area during the day today. And further to the southwest, we do have some showers tapering off, some rain and snow and possible freezing rain areas in the Kuskokwim Valley. Mostly light rain showers across the Alaska Peninsula back towards the central parts of the Bering and the central part of the Aleutian chain. And we look further to the north, mainly cloudy conditions along the Arctic and the northwest coast, and then along the southeastern areas, mainly clouds as a front pushed in earlier. Some lighter showers are occurring this afternoon. Putting that into motion one more time, you can see the front that had moved up through the central Gulf Coast area, and then also this other low pressure system near Dutch Harbor. Looking at your weather today on the map, we had a 975 millibar low just to the north of the Dutch Harbor area, and this was swinging this occluded front over towards the Bristol Bay area. Some gusty winds from the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutian area. A mix of rain and snow as you headed north towards the Kuskokwim Delta, and then further north of this area saw mainly snow across the central parts of the state, and then along the northwestern areas, some blowing snow noted, and light areas of blowing snow came down this afternoon. The blizzard warning that was out earlier for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast has expired, and just some light snow will be seen across the eastern parts of the state. Along the southeastern parts of the Gulf Coast, we had this front that moved in today, and it's beginning to dissipate now. So just some light rain showers all the way back towards the Cordova, Valdez area and Prince William Sound, but much lighter showers in this area currently. Across the Gulf areas, mainly low clouds, even though it appears to be clear. We do have some low-level moisture, so that's going to continue to move up into the Gulf Coast areas, keeping things kind of moist. Looking at your forecast for overnight, we're expecting these showers along the southeast and the central Gulf Coast and all the way back towards the western Gulf to become lighter and possibly clear out in a few areas, making it a little bit cooler overnight. And those areas that keep the cloud cover will stay at or just above normal temperatures. Looking further west where the larger low pressure system is over the central part of the Bering, have some light showers that are just going to continue to move up through the Alaska Peninsula and through the Aleutian Chain. Further to the north of the Pribilofs, that's where you're going to see the light rain and snow mix as colder temperatures are pretty much up near the Yukon Delta and north. Across the Bering Strait, we're going to see some gusty winds continuing in the overnight hours all through the northwestern parts of the state, brings some light snow showers here with the frontal boundary beginning to diminish to the north. And some light showers will still be possible across the eastern Beaufort Sea coast and the central areas of the Beaufort Sea. So as we head into your day tomorrow, another front will be making its way on up to the southern part of the Gulf, and this will bring some lighter showers just to the south of the Gulf areas. Rain across the southeast will be very light tomorrow, and along the Gulf waters in general should be a drier day. And also across the interior, possible chance for lighter snow across the northern parts of the state back through the northwest. As you head to the south or across the Kuskokwim Delta and south, we're expecting primarily rain in this area. This low pressure system will not make any further progress north as high pressure is just to the north of Russia here. And then we have some mix of rain and snow mainly across the western parts of the Bering with just the lighter showers just south of this front that's going to move north. I should mention overnight you may see some gusty conditions in the Dutch Harbor area as this front lifts to the north. And then as we head into your Tuesday forecast, we're going to see this occlusion moved further north and just lighter showers coming in along westerly and northwest flow across most of the Aleutians, staying mainly all rain across the Alaska Peninsula. Across the Bristol Bay area with an upper level disturbance, we'll see some light rain showers here and a mix of light rain and snow where the temperature gradient begins to cool as you go to the north parts of the state. Possible snow showers here as a cold front begins to droop down past the Brooks Range. So light showers in this area with gusty conditions continuing across the northwest with some blowing snow and reduced visibilities. Across the Gulf coastal areas of the front that comes into the south part of the Gulf will push off to the east, and so most of the rain is going to be affecting the southeastern areas, so probably 1/2 to 1 inch of rain, good dousing over here with this front, but mainly lighter shower activity making its way back towards the Prince William Sound and the eastern parts of the Kenai mainly, and then further inland, possible some shower activity, some light snow or light rain, drizzly conditions here, but most of the rain activity will be confined to the coastal areas to the southeast and the Alaska Peninsula. And then let's take a look now at the temperatures today with all the rain and the cloud cover, moderate temperatures mainly across the southeast. Let me mention these are our new temperature maps, and as you can see we have the different temperatures are coded for the category of temperature by 10 degrees. So in the 40s you'll see there's the green color, and the darker blue colors are the coldest temperatures. So feel free to give us some comments on the internet. We certainly welcome that to see if you like these new maps. Currently the temperatures are offset slightly to the right for the cities, so we might adjust that to center that a little bit better. Over here across the Central Gulf we saw temperatures in the upper 30s to lower 40s with highs reaching up to 45 degrees at Homer this afternoon. As you look to the north, a very quick gradient into the lower 20s to the teens across the central parts of the state. Towards the north, coldest temperatures near Barrow at -6 degrees, and across the Brooks Range, varying temperatures from near 0 degrees to up to the lower teens. Across the northwestern parts of the state, where it's a little bit breezier and gustier along the Seward Peninsula, saw temperatures getting into the upper teens to lower 20s. And as you drop further to the south, moderating temperatures actually across the Yukon and Kuskokwim deltas in the upper 20s to lower 30s. Across Bristol Bay and Alaska Peninsula, temperatures were in the lower 30s to upper 40s when you got out to the peninsula area. And then across the Pribilofs, you saw temperatures in the mid 30s. Across the rest of the chain, mainly temperatures in the mid-30s. For your temperatures overnight, don't expect too much of a diurnal change. So temperatures mainly across the chain in the mid-30s, with temperatures dropping into the upper 30s across the Alaska Peninsula, mid-30s across the Bristol Bay area, and as you move towards the northwestern coast, a gradual change to the single digits. And then cold front will push in overnight, bringing colder temperatures across the Arctic coastal areas and down across the interior parts of the state, a little bit colder than what it has been. And then along the Gulf Coast areas, temperatures will moderate in the mid-30s to upper 20s, depending on your location. And then across the southeastern areas, expect temperatures to get down into the mid-30s and possible some readings still staying in the low 40s with warmer temperatures there. All right, tomorrow's high temperatures, everything should start climbing up into the lower 40s for you in the southeast and across the Gulf Coast. Another nice day in the mid 30s to lower 40s. And then towards the north, you drop into the single digits across the interior parts of the state and along the Arctic, staying cold in the digits just below zero. So along the northwestern coast, a little bit of a warming as you get towards the Seward Peninsula, gradually warming into the lower 30s, but temperatures a little bit cooler across the Bristol Bay area in the upper 30s, mid to upper 30s, depending on how much cloud cover they keep. Along the Alaska Peninsula, temperatures here will get into the upper 30s again to lower 40s, with the Pribilof seeing in the mid 30s. Not much change across the chain, staying in the mid 30s during the day. Now on to your flying weather, with low pressure being the dominant feature all across the Bering. We'll see mostly cloud cover across the chain and the Gulf coastal areas. Along as you get towards the interior parts of the state, some breaks in the clouds or visibilities lifting. And then along the Brooks Range and just south, we're expecting some MVFR conditions here. IFR conditions will be mainly across the extreme northwestern parts of the state, along the west coastal areas down through Kodiak. Across the southeastern parts of the state, mainly MVFR with low pressure also staying over the Gulf in the southeast. Now on to your passes. We have Anatuvik Pass will be MVFR for tomorrow, and then Adigan Pass will be MVFR as well. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will both be MVFR, and then Rainy Pass will be MVFR and should lift to VFR later. And Windy Pass will be MVFR for tomorrow. Isabel Pass will also be MVFR. Looking at Mentasta, MVFR should see some breaks in the clouds there, going to VFR in the afternoon, and then Tanita Pass should see MVFR conditions primarily through the day. Looking at Portage Pass should be IFR, and then for the west entrance, we should see MVFR conditions hold here for much of the day with possibly VFR conditions. Chilkoot and White Pass will be IFR, lifting to MVFR later in the day. And then our freezing levels across the state are mainly hugging along the coastline and back through Bristol Bay and through the northern parts of the Bering. The 2,000-foot levels are from the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, down to 6,000 feet towards the Dixon entrance. Looking at your icing for tomorrow, mainly around the system that's lingering in the Bering, and icing conditions will be below 8,000 feet here, and above 4,000 feet light icing possible in the southeast. Looking at your jet stream for tomorrow, not much of an amplified pattern. The jet stream is going to be the strongest just to the south of the chain, between 100 and 110 knots to 115, and this is what's going to send those low pressure systems through the Gulf. So without much amplification, it's hard to say how far north or how far west these systems will get on Wednesday. Now looking across the state, rather weak flow out of the south direction between 40 and 45 knots. Looking at your 9,000-foot winds, low pressure in the Bering will have a change of direction around this between 35 and 40 knots, primarily in the eastern part of the Bering. Across the Gulf of Alaska, a southerly flow between 25 and 30 knots until you get inland, and a lighter flow here between 10 and 15 knots. Across the north part of the state, low pressure just off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. We'll see winds coming down around 20 knots out of the north, turning direction around this low pressure system. And then high pressure along the northwestern areas, we'll see 25 to 30 knots out of the northeast here. Same kind of pattern across the 9,000-foot winds, with a turning of direction with the low nicely stacked in the eastern part of the Bering here, between 30 and 35 knots as you make it around a low. A little bit lighter winds across most of the Aleutian chain here, around 25 knots. Across the interior parts of the state, the winds will taper down from 20 to 30 miles per hour. We do have a little bit stronger wind coming in off of Kodiak across the Aleutian range at 40 knots. As you go to the north, same at this level is 20 knots out of the northwest around the low pressure here, and across the southeast between 15 and 20 knots as you make it inland out of the south direction. Okay, turbulence tomorrow will mainly be across the western part of the state and the Alaska Peninsula below 7,000 to 9,000 feet. All right, in just a moment, we'll be back with your marine forecast.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. On Friday, our guest was Bob Lewis. Bob is a friend to many of us, and he retired on Friday as the FAA Regional Administrator after 49 years of service in the government, 47 with the FAA. And I asked Bob to come back tonight and take the opportunity to thank his colleagues and other folks in the aviation industry. So Bob, over to you.
Well, thank you, Harry. It's nice to be with you again. Feels great to be retired. A wonderful feeling. Well, you know, of all the things that have occurred in the field of aviation, the people that work in aviation are just a very special group based on my experience. I've worked with some very wonderful people at the FAA, people that have been a great help to me, have influenced me in many, many ways, have taught me a great deal, all of which I appreciate. I consider many of those that work in our organization as mentors for me because of their willingness to share their knowledge and their expertise in certain aspects of aviation, and that's been wonderful. Leaving that team is going to be difficult for me, and as I look ahead, I think, you know, I don't have to get up and go to work in the morning. That's a bit of a challenge. But one of the things that I have felt very strongly about is the importance of the FAA working closely with the aviation community, the leaders in the aviation industry here in Alaska. And it seems like that has gone pretty well over the years. I mean, there have been times when there's been a few rough spots, but generally speaking, it's just been outstanding to have that type of a working relationship where, you know, when something goes wrong or there's something that needs to be improved upon, we can sit down together and talk about it, figure out what needs to be done, and then arrange to accomplish that. And I think we've seen a lot of successes. You know, when you think about the Capstone program, which really became the backbone of the new next generation air transportation system, that was all developed right here in Alaska. It wasn't just the FAA, it was representatives of the aviation industry, the University of Alaska, the FAA working together as a team to come up with the solutions that we needed to make that work. And it turned out to be very successful. One organization that I would really like to mention that I think has played a very important part in aviation safety has been the Medallion Foundation. That organization, I mean, you won't find anything like it anywhere in the country. And I think that with the quality of the people that we have at the Medallion Foundation and the work that they do has contributed significantly to the downturn in the number of accidents that we have had. I mentioned on Friday the Capstone and weather cameras as being contributing factors, but certainly the Medallion Foundation has played a very important role in that. The Alaska Aviation Safety Foundation, it's been wonderful to work with you, Harry, and the folks that are involved with the Safety Foundation. The seminars that you put on are just outstanding. In fact, we just had one a couple weeks ago, one of the best I've ever seen, and it was just, I mean, there was standing room only, you know, and those are just wonderful things. But in the university, I think we really owe a great debt of gratitude to the university, Rocky Capozzi and the people there, his staff. They do a wonderful job. They do a lot of great training there, but being able to work together with people like Rocky and you know, they make their facility available, just outstanding. And when we can all work together, I think we find good results. I mean, it's not just the FAA. We have wonderful people at the FAA. But we really have to have the rest of the aviation industry working together with us to be successful. And so I'm hopeful when I think about the future. I think, you know, we need to continue to stress that. You know, and there's one other person that I would really like to acknowledge, Dee Hansen in the Airmen's Association. You know, Dee puts on this trade show every year. You know, and it's the most exciting aviation event I think we have in the state year after year, and the amount of work that goes into that is just unimaginable. But Dee gets it done every year. It's an outstanding event, and I've just appreciated her work in that arena.
Well, when you talk about the team, there is one more thing that the team is planning, and I think it's representative of the appreciation and respect they have for you, and that's your going away party on Friday. So in wrapping tonight's program up, Bob, I want to say one more time on behalf of the aviation community in Alaska and everybody that has had the pleasure of working with you, thank you very much for your service.
Oh, thank you, Harry. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's been great. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, fly safe.
All right, welcome back to the show. Now on to the ice maps for today. Looks like the ice edge is just along the Kuskokwim Delta. Of course, everything is frozen along the northwestern areas and Arctic coast, but it looks like we had some receding. There is no ice along the northern parts of the peninsula now, and there's been some clearing just in the southern parts of the Cook Inlet. So, and then there's the ice edge just hugging around the, just to the west of the Barren Islands here, so not much ice along the coastal areas. And now on to the southeastern forecast for Tuesday, mainly between 10 and 20 miles per hour across the inner channels and knots, and then 15 to 20 knots across the outer waters. And all this is going to be out of the southeast primarily. We'll see seas between 2 and 4 feet across the inner channels, and along the outer waters looking between 8 and 10 feet. For your Wednesday forecast, change of direction along the outer waters between 25 and 30 knots, primarily small crafts until you get further north towards the Yakutat area. And winds are going to be primarily out of the south direction here, with the easterly direction as you head further to the north. Southerly direction across the inner channels around 20 knots with seas between, well, just around 4 feet. And then as we look at your Gulf Coast area, the west central and western areas will see easterly winds between 15 and 20 knots with small crafts 25 knots along the southeastern parts of the Kenai, with 30 knots across the Barren Islands out of the east, and then a east to southeast direction near Kodiak, 20 knots here. And then across the Cook Inlet and south between 50 and 20 knots. Seas along the Prince William Sound will be 3 feet with 8 to 11 feet across the western parts of the Gulf, and then 3 to 5 feet across most of the Cook Inlet. See some 8-foot seas near the Barren Islands. Now looking at Wednesday, lighter winds this day with winds variable to north direction across most of the area until you get towards the Cook Inlet, the Kodiak Island area out of the south direction with small crafts just to the east of Kodiak Island. And then seas here will be between 5 10 feet, and then across the inner channel, the Cook Inlet between 2 and 3 feet primarily. And then the strongest winds for Tuesday will be across the Alaska Peninsula between 25 and 30 knots with higher gusts in the area, especially across the Bristol Bay, higher gusts up to 35 knots. And then seas will be between 7 and 9 feet on the Bering side and 13 to 17 feet on the Pacific side. Heading into your Wednesday forecast, lighter winds across the area, 10 knots for Bristol Bay out of the south, and then south to southwesterly direction everywhere else between 15 and 30 knots, small crafts just to the north of the Sandpoint Cold Bay area. And then seas will be between 4 and 9 feet and 11 to 14 feet on the Pacific side. Looking at your Aleutians for tomorrow, 20 to 30 knots across most of the area, small crafts, with possible gusty winds just in the morning lingering across the east and central areas. Seas on the Bering side will be around 10 to 13 feet, and then on the Pacific side between 16 and 21 feet. Looking at your forecast for Wednesday, we'll have gale winds across the western and central Aleutians at 35 knots out of the west as that front lifts to the north. We'll see small crafts elsewhere out of the southwest and west directions at 30 knots, and seas will be between 11 and 14 feet primarily on the Bering side and 14 to 16 feet just south of the chain. Looking at your west coast forecast and towards the northern parts of the Bering and central Bering, winds will primarily be out of the east and northeast direction, small crafts between 25 and 30 knots, with just the east to southeast direction as you head to the south of Mercuric area, and that's going to be 30 knots out of the southeast. Seas in open waters will be between 8 and 11 feet, and then Wednesday will be strong winds just to the north, 25 to 30 knots, and to the south, out of the south at 20 knots. Seas here will be 6 to 9 feet that day. And then looking at your North Arctic coast, between 20 and 30 knots, strongest winds across the northwest area, brisk winds across the northwest, 25 to 30 knots, and ice all across the coastal areas, and just a little bit of a lightening of the winds across the northern areas with brisk winds staying across the northwest. Well, I'm Kimberly Hefner, and tomorrow Dave Percy
These
will
forecasts are
be
to be
joining
used
us.
for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.